Thank you. I'm going to call this meeting of the City of Powell River Council Committee of the Whole meeting for June 17th, 2025 to order. I want to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place under traditional territory of the Tla'amin people who have lived here since time immemorial. We have the next item on the agenda is adoption of the agenda itself. Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move that we move the number 4 public input period to immediately before number 10 new business, because the only thing on the public input period would relate to that, and we have a presenter who'd like to speak to 10.1.
Don't need a seconder for that. Council, all in favor of that change to the agenda? Any opposed? Well, the agenda as a whole, all those in favor of the agenda as amended? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Skip over the public input period till later. And here we are already at general matters, item 5.1. Delegation, Kim Markle, Executive Director of LIFT Community Service, update on community programming and housing initiatives. Ms. Markle. Don't forget to speak into the microphone. The people at home can only hear you if you do.
Okay, and the clock's at 5 minutes. Just waiting for the screen to come up here.
You just had to get rid of that Adobe thing.
Oh, there you go. Oh,
Now we're out of space.
good on your end? Okay. Okay, great. Let's get started. There's been a lot of activity happening with LIFT, and it feels like it's been some months since I've seen many of you. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to give you a quick 5-minute update on some of the things that are going on for our programs and services, and then also welcome any comments or questions about what I'm about to share or anything else. Button. Are you playing with that or am I playing with that? Do you have it on? Aha, here we go. So as most of you know, we lost our federal funding for our immigrant services this year, which accounted for 85% of our budget. So at the beginning of the fiscal, we unfortunately had to lay off 3 out of our 4 staff and move out of the current welcome center at Crossroads Village. We were lucky enough to maintain one of our senior staff members and all of our volunteers, and have been offering limited services in the community out of the library, and are looking forward to moving these programs into our community resource center when we have full occupancy of the site. We also were very fortunate that the Multicultural and Immigrant Services Association, or MISA, which is located on Vancouver Island, they were able to secure ongoing federal funding for 3 years, and through partnership with LIFT, decided to hire a local employee in Cathet for 3 days a week to keep our services closer to home. So we were able to bring one of the displaced staff back into the newcomer services. We launched our point-in-time homeless count on March 7th of this year. This was the follow-up to the community's first ever homelessness count in 2023. We look forward to being able to share some of those results in the fall when we receive them from HSABC. However, we definitely have the sense that we didn't see as many people as we have in previous years, and there was a significant amount of individuals who had participated in the 2023 count who adamantly declined to participate this time. I think some of that may have been due to the disruptions that were happening at the site. We had already moved our overdose prevention site, and our emergency shelter was weeks away from closing. So we did close the emergency shelter in March and displace those staff who had been providing that essential service in our community, and look forward to continuing the conversations with BC Housing and City about a new temporary location. We definitely felt the impact, and I think the community has felt the impact in the development of multiple small encampments, including those located on both city and regional property. We've been connecting with business neighbors, and although there's less impact being felt by the businesses that used to be the CRC neighbors, the broader community seems to be feeling more impacts around congregation, public substance use, and issues like garbage and public urination. With the closure of our shelter, we did receive temporary funding from BC Housing to launch a homelessness outreach team. And this team has already seen over 40 unique individuals who are living outside within the city core. And we also were able to up staff at supportive housing to better address some of the increased traffic we're seeing in terms of guests. Finally, our Community Resource Center and Family Place have been planning a move for some months into the Crossroads Village. We were able to open the doors for the Community Resource Center in May after months of renovations with occupancy limited to 30 people. And we're currently working with property owner, city staff, and legal supports to continue the renovations that are needed to receive full occupancy status at that site. And at that time, we look forward to moving Family Place closer to our Community Resource Center. And of course, much gratitude for the ongoing use of the space at the Town Center Mall while we do these renos. With all these things going on, where do we go from here? We continue to focus on ongoing opportunities for collaboration and partnership, and are working closely with nonprofits, provincial funders, community groups, community members to collectively try and break down the stigma of homelessness and try and come up with some tactics to best support those people who are struggling right now. We are focused on the changes in the political and funding landscape that most nonprofits are facing right now, and trying to run our programs very tightly on conservative budgets and become really creative. And you'll see our moves to co-location of programs is just one strategy we're adopting to try and keep the doors open. And what I would leave everyone with is, as always, focusing on care of the community. And, we're seeing a lot of people in self-preservation mode struggling. I think we all are. And that's not just the participants who access our services, that's our staff, that's the broader community. And so just trying to make sure that the work we do from a spirit of caring for everyone in Cathet. That's all I have to share today, and appreciate any comments or questions.
Okay, just go around the table with questions like I like to do. So, Councillor Alameda, any questions?
I'm good, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm through the chair to Ms. Merkel. I know that there's a number, you mentioned partnerships and a number of groups working, so like Vancouver Coastal Health, specifically through their mental health and substance use, has some homelessness supports. You're doing work, the Coalition to End Homelessness, and there's also like other individuals and smaller groups that are taking action in different ways and providing support after the closure of the shelter. I'm wondering which, other than an actual shelter, which I know BC Housing is still working on, are there gaps in services or overlaps in services? Anything that you think might still need to be addressed by community groups or other levels of government?
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great question. And I would share that I think the volunteers and the community members that are accessing the encampments on a more regular basis are definitely better positioned to answer that, but than I am from my office. But I'll take a stab at it anyways. I think despite the robust nutritional supports that are coming towards people living outside, there's always the need for more nutrition. Public bathrooms, porta potties at the places that people gather would be really impactful. And the one encampment that's across from the hospital has really demonstrated, the encampment residents' ability to maintain and preserve a porta potty, which I think historically may have been a barrier to wanting to put those into public locations. The Coalition is moving forward, if they haven't already, with opening their nighttime drop-in center. But that leaves a lot of hours of the night where people don't have a safe place to go. And last but not least, there's many things I think we could do, but there's a stark lack of storage in community for people who don't have housing. So although we stand up many of these resources, there's an inherent vulnerability from walking away from your camp and not having any place to store your items while you're away.
Thank you.
Where's that gone?
Two questions actually. One's a yes or no. It's the family place will be able to.
You need to talk into your mic.
Yeah, I thought it was right there in front of me. Is it true that Family Place will be able to stay at the town center mall until your facility is ready to move them in?
It's not really a yes or no question.
Oh, okay.
We have no indication either which way. I mean, we've been able to stay at the mall without a lease for many, many years. So we are optimistic, yes.
That's great to know. Another one?
You have another one? Yeah.
You mentioned homeless outreach teams. Can you give a little more detail as to what they're doing? Like, how are they? I know there's others like the Coalition to End Homelessness that's providing outreach as well. What's this team doing?
Yeah, no, great question. So currently we're operating a 3-person team with our funding for a 6-month period. And so we are functioning primarily Monday to Friday because we need people to work with other people for employee safety. And the team is outreaching to all the places in town where individuals are residing outside. So they are delivering water to all the encampments daily, sometimes multiple times a day. And we have big, I think they're 4-gallon vessels. So they're doing a lot of weather response work. They're ensuring that the areas where multiple people are gathered have functioning and viable fire extinguishers. They're helping with garbage disposal. They're helping with laundry. They're helping with appointment accompaniment. And it's not enough. It's 3 people, 5 days a week. And so, when people move away from their belongings and sometimes leave a mess in the community, we're not always able to respond and work with bylaws, or there's people who have need that we can't see as regularly as they need to be seen. And last but not least, it is really focused on people experiencing homelessness within the city confines because of the numbers of staff that we have.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. The question I have deals with who's responsible for ensuring there's shelter for people that are homeless. My understanding is that last September, individuals were made aware that the lease would not be renewed. In your discussions with the province, BC Housing or other department officials, have they made it very clear that they accept their responsibility for solving homelessness in municipalities across the province?
Well, BC Housing has engaged their realty team to work with a local realtor in our community to sort of run down any possible location. So I think by their actions alone, they have put themselves out there as being an active and willing partner in addressing the issues around homelessness and doing everything they can to try and find a future location for a shelter.
So just for clarity, they've been trying since last September to find a facility that could be used as a temporary shelter.
Well, my sense of time frame, wasn't it before September? That's where I'm getting stuck. I don't want to commit to the date, but BC Housing came to the table as soon as we knew we were losing the space. We actually reached out to BC Housing as well as I think municipal partners and local partners to be like, hey, this might be happening. We're trying to secure this space. We're not feeling that optimistic. And that's when we started having meetings with BC Housing.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair to Ms. Markle. My question is around the homelessness count you mentioned, and we had some sort of feelings about whether it being less or more. Is that data expected to come out at a particular time with the real numbers? And then my question, I guess, is around methodology for finding people to participate in the count. The previous one you mentioned centered around a lot of the access because we had a shelter and things to draw on participants with, and you're thinking the population is more scattered and it was harder to count them. So when would we see the data, and then how do we qualify that data if that's the case? And do you have do you think that the actual number of homelessness is up or down from the previous count?
Sure. So we would anticipate the data to come around the fall, I believe, from HSABC, and then they do sort of the demographic breakdown and give us the numbers that we're able to share more broadly in the community. I think, 2023, we were able to stand up like a really meaningful celebration about bringing in the first ever homelessness count into the community. And I think it felt really promising to people who are experiencing the daily impacts of homelessness, and generated a lot of excitement and created a feeling that something might change. And so what we tried something quite similar to, have food at the CRC. However, when you looked around, there were signs, we're closing. We don't have a new home. So just the feeling was really different. Despite our best efforts, we weren't able to generate that celebratory feel. I think what I've always said is that the homelessness count is one indicator of a community's experience of homelessness. It's not the sole indicator. And I think that's why, for us, it's very important that we continue to keep an eye on the numbers of people that we're seeing, who the outreach team is reaching out to. We know, there was 50 odd, maybe it was 56, unique individuals who accessed our shelter this calendar year before we closed it. So these all help to layer to create a picture. And your last question. I think it's very hard to capture the rural experience of homelessness. And by that, I mean the people living south and north of town who maybe do not self-identify as homeless, who are living in vans or campers on the side of the street, who are couch surfing or who are living in trailers on properties. So I think, our count will always be an underestimation.
Councillor Pong.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair. Good to see you again, Ms. Markle. It's always a pleasure to get an update on what's happening in our community, especially for myself that doesn't attend or go to a lot of your individual meetings with other members of council and that type of thing. So I have a couple of questions here to get a better picture of what is actually going on out there. You mentioned that with the closure of the overnight facility, you believe that there were 40 individuals displaced. From what I've heard talking to people that support and go to visit the encampments out there, they have a number count of about 20 within the city here in the various locations that you mentioned. Is 20 an accurate number?
So the number that I'm sharing with you is a number that we capture and report to BC Housing, which then gets reported up to the Ministry of Housing, because with the closure of the shelter, many provincial partners were quite concerned about how it would ripple through the community. So our outreach team captures the number of unique individuals. So there was 20 beds at the shelter. So when we closed the shelter, in that point in time, 20 people did not have a bed that night. But there's always been more people experiencing homelessness in the community than there is for shelter beds.
I'm talking about right at the complex, near the police station, those sites that are being visited by certain individuals. Do you have an accurate count of how many people there are there?
I have an accurate count of how many people the outreach team has seen, not how many people at a point in time are within the encampments, because people do move, they shift their locations.
So the encampments themselves, one point, I believe our fire department got involved and they supplied fire pits when the weather was cooler, it was damper. People were able to keep warm. What's the situation now with those fire pits? Are they still active?
With the, is it stage 2 and stage 3? The campfire ban that's currently in effect. And because the people living in the encampments are in wooded areas, they have been instructed to have no further fires.
Safety is always paramount.
Yeah, us as well. And, I'm working closely with fire and bylaws around that.
You also mentioned that in your delivery that because of your funding shortfall, you've had to lay off 3 out of 4 individuals. In what department was that?
Oh, yeah. So that was in reference to when we lost our federal funding for immigrant services.
Oh,
Yeah.
So there's no danger of your organization shutting down because of lack of funding. I was really worried when I heard 3 out of 4 got laid off.
That's 75%. That would be not so great. No, we continue to have a strong commitment from our provincial funders. However, we do operate some smaller programs that we have piecework funding. So a little bit from the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction, a little bit from gaming, and that's always a struggle.
So my last question is in terms of who is actually searching for overnight facilities. I'm aware of some of the situation and recommendations are going on. I suppose that LIFT itself and BC Housing are taking the majority of the lead on finding a facility. Is that correct?
Well, we continue to have our commercial realtor locally. So we're running down like any space that seems to have appropriate zoning that's available. And BC Housing also has their commercial realtor. I think they call it a commercial realtor. We're definitely better positioned to go look at spaces because we're in community and we're the operators rather than, my portfolio manager from BC Housing. So we're working together, and I think there's not a lot that's available in community at this point, even if you wanted to open a retail shop.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Markle. Appreciate it.
Anyone else with a last question? Councillor Southcott?
Thank you, Chair. Immigrant Services, you said that now you've got a person working 3 days a week. I'm also aware that in the past, there was, or at least my understanding is that there was a fair bit of volunteerism from the local community. Is that continuing then? And like, can this person who's working 3 days a week coordinate that? And how has your program, like what's happening? Is the program actually functioning like it used to, which was wonderful?
So between the position that's funded by MISA from Vancouver Island and LIFT, we have 2 part-time immigrant services staff, and then we have maintained all of our volunteers. So the volunteers have many responsibilities, but one of the key responsibilities is around literacy support and paperwork completion. And our program couldn't run without them, and they're all highly trained, have been around for quite some time, and really are the heart of that service.
Thank you. So glad to hear that.
So thank you for coming, Ms. Markle, and giving us an update on where we are. I know that we're still in the throes of trying to create a second supportive housing and looking for temporary and short-term sites for shelter beds, et cetera. And we've got a long way to go, and it's not a long way until the weather becomes very unpleasant to be outside again. So thanks for coming and giving us your update.
Thank you for your time.
I think the next thing we have is the consent agenda. Would you like to make a motion, Councillor Isaacson?
Yeah, I move that the June 17th, 2025 consent agenda be adopted.
We have a seconder, even though we don't need one. We're voting here. All those in favor of adopting the consent agenda? Any opposed? That's carried. And that brings us to public input period, when you get to come up and talk about new business. You have a member of the public approaching the microphone. Go ahead, sir. This is an opportunity to make a comment. Let us know your name, and you have 2 minutes.
My name is Michael Gelber, and as one of the people involved in housing said, I'm just a random person that came up with this idea. And I'm going to read you my 2-minute input, which is related to the proposal, which is before you from last 2 weeks. Once upon a time, there were no homeless people in Powell River. So my question is, what happened? What changed? And is there anything I can do about it as a random person? I have been what my wife calls the steward of the woods behind my house for over 20 years. And all of a sudden, they are occupied by homeless campers. First one, and then many. I came up with this proposal after speaking with the occupants in the woods. In these woods, I pick up the garbage, even down to cigarette butts. I talk to the teenagers who gather by the creek after school. Some of them are even interested in philosophy. I talk to the desperate who are there for a drink and a smoke. And finally, I befriend the homeless. I was inspired in 2024 by a Maclean's article about the 12 Neighbors Project in Fredericton, when 96 tiny homes have started making a dent in the homeless problem and changing people's lives. The other article was about the city of Vienna, where the city has been building and maintaining social housing for nearly 100 years. This keeps rents competitively low, allowing students and the poor good and affordable housing. Briefly, to digress, how did we get to this crisis in affordable housing? Briefly, it all started with the abandonment of Keynesian economics, where graduated taxes paid for social programs. Milton Friedman provided the model of control of the money supply, and Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, and Brian Mulroney put it into practice. They oversaw the defunding of social programs, leaving many agencies, like Ms. Markle's, focused on fundraising and basic services without funding for innovative ideas. for over 40 years through the gradual abandonment of social housing and compounded with the inflation of house prices and rents, housing has become utterly unaffordable for low-income people, and thus they live in tents in the woods. They often arrive in the woods through bad luck and bad decisions and bad health. The problem is, of course, exacerbated by the ubiquity of drugs, the growth of mental health issues, despair, and hopelessness, all of which are related. When the Minister of Housing in Finland was asked about the homeless problem there on CBC, he did not understand the question. When it was explained and he was asked what he does for people who cannot afford housing, he said, "We give them houses." None of my ideas for the problem in Powell River are original. The 12 Neighbors Project in Fredericton has inspired me with their model, and my proposal, which is before council.
Excuse me, Mr. Gilmer. The clock isn't running, but I've been watching on my iPad, and I think you've reached the end of your 2 minutes, so I have to ask council if they will bear with us and give you some more time to finish your presentation. Don't see any objections, so go ahead, try to wrap it up as quickly as you can, please.
Well, it won't be a minute or two more. The 12 Neighbors Project in Fredericton has inspired me with their model, and my proposal, which is before council, is for 200 tiny homes. The homes are 250 square feet and fully equipped with everything except laundry, which will be housed separately. The residents pay 30% of their income, and that covers everything, including electricity and basic internet. The homes are beautiful. I have the stamped official plans of the tiny homes, which I have forwarded to city planning. The city has already designated 8 city-owned properties for affordable housing. Alternatively, there is the possibility of privately owned properties being donated for this project. One of the hurdles we face is that there are wealthy people who live here who are prepared to donate substantially to get this project started, but they insist on a tax receipt. I have not yet found a registered charity here to fulfill this role. I estimate the total cost of a project of this size to be about $27 million. And while this may seem impossible to realize, I would like to show you the minimum income that this project would generate. 200 people paying 30% of their income, about $400 a month, equals $80,000 or close to $1 million per year. This would pay for operations and generate income for the city. On the other hand, recent research has shown that the savings on emergency services, which, by the way, are currently attending by my house, the fire brigade, for the people who are homeless, generated by this model are greater than $15,000 per person per year, which is $3 million a year in savings if this project were to go ahead on emergency services. When we get this project completed, it will be a model for other municipalities to follow. It is up to the provincial and federal governments to fund this, to put their money where their stated priorities are. The first steps are to secure the land, to engage a nonprofit or charitable organization who can both receive private and government funds, and as well provide the expertise to build and manage the project, and an individual to provide the leadership. Any questions?
No, you have an opportunity to make a comment, not a question period. Sorry about that.
Okay.
If you'd like to take a seat, we'll get to the item on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Councillor Palm, this is a comment period, and comments don't include a question period. So, Councillor, this is actually Councillor Southcott's notice of motion. I was going to ask Councillor Southcott if he had a motion he was going to make.
Yeah, you'll notice, Chair, that it was added to it became new business, which I think is more appropriate. But I would like to speak to it very briefly, if I may.
You have a motion that you're speaking to?
I don't have a motion at this very moment.
Our rules of order require that we have motions to speak to, rather than just open discussion. Yep, okay, go ahead.
Maybe if I have a couple of minutes, I might come up with an actual motion. I'm pretty familiar with the project that went on in Fredericton that Mr. Gelber referred to, and also Vienna's situation. The thing that impresses me about that one, and also the Fredericton, Vienna's more public. Fredericton was a coalition of many contributors. Mr. Gelber has already, in our discussions together, has already detailed to me conversations that relate to quite the possibility of a breadth of support for an idea like this in our community. It seems pretty clear to me that this isn't something that the city would do. So we're not analogous to Vienna at all. But there are all sorts of spin-off potential benefits, as there were in the Fredericton situation. We also are aware of Duncan, Port Alberni, and Victoria, who have done projects something like this on a slightly smaller scale in the Fredericton case. I was fascinated by what Mr. Gelber put together that was provided to us a couple of weeks ago. And I'm not 100% sure how to move forward, because I don't think from an initial standpoint the city really does have a central role. I encouraged Mr. Gelber to bring this forward, and without thinking about it, introduced it as a notice of motion sort of inadvisably in the last meeting. So I apologize about that. I'm more interested in this coming to public attention, because I think that there's all sorts of possibilities. And I just want to refer as well to the mayor's initiative from last year, I believe it was, that was along the same lines. Perhaps seeds planted then are starting to germinate now in the thinking of Mr. Gelber and others. So I think there are various agencies in this community that could participate. As I said, I think there's a range of potential for benefit in this community, not just to homeless population, but as well to, from an economic standpoint, and resilience for business and industry within our own community, particularly the construction industry. The key to the approach is a phased approach, which in business in general, I've seen succeed more than big capitalization and starting things in a big way. So I still don't have a motion to make, but I wanted to bring this to us as information, and I'm really hoping that it can go somewhere, because there is clearly a need in our community.
Councillor Palm, did you have something to say?
Your Worship, sorry, your acting mayor, I had just wanted to thank Mr. Gelber for coming forward and giving his presentation. I think takes someone thinking outside the box and saying what's happening across the landscape, bringing these ideas forward. I just want to commend him for doing that today. That was my main point. But when I look at the presentation that we have before us, what he's asking for to make this project a viable option is, when coming up with government funding to do so, is somewhere in the vicinity of 5 acres. I know the city is land rich and a dollar short. This is an excellent opportunity for the city to get involved in that regard. Thank you, Chair.
I've got my name on the list, and I've got Mayor Wasno and Councillor Elliott on the list as well. I'm just going to do something I wouldn't normally do and make a motion so we actually have something to talk about. I'm going to move that the committee direct staff to prepare a report on options for putting this letter into action. And I'll stop there and speak about why I think we should pass that motion. Okay. I think it's a great idea. Mayor Wasno has talked about the potential for tiny homes. There are examples all over the place. Councillor Southcott has talked about some far away. Our neighbors in Duncan have tried a similar thing. They've actually been through quite a metamorphosis and gone through a number of different phases of their development to where they think they've got a really good model now, which is based on a partnership between the regional district, First Nations, and various nonprofits in the area to set up a system that's working for people who are homeless and moving them into shelter where they can improve their lives after that. So we know it's possible to do. What it takes is an intention to do it, an intention to try to bring a partnership together, as your report clearly says. You have to have a partnership. You have to have land. You have to get the right people together. Then you have to get funds from the provincial, federal, and federal government. I think we can do that. I think what we need to do, though, so that we can focus our efforts, is to ask for a report on from staff, on how we can do it. And I know that our staff has told us that they're going to be working on a report on a housing authority, which we've been talking about for a long time. We've been promised that report. I know it's coming soon, and this could work in together with the same kind of partnerships that we're talking about there. So I'm hoping we'll pass this motion and we can get staff working on it. I know they've got a lot on their plates. They've got a lot to do, but this is a great place to start working from. So that's my 2 cents worth. And Mayor Wasno, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. So it actually was shortly after we got elected that I brought forward a motion to have staff look at tiny homes here in Powell River. And I brought that forward. I lived in Fredericton for 5 years. I have family still in Fredericton. I was well aware of their tiny home project and the commitment of the city working with different agencies at that time. And so I'm fully supportive. Unfortunately, my motion was defeated at that time. And I'm hoping that this motion will pass so that we're sitting somewhere in 2 years, we have tiny homes built. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. So what gives projects legs is what you're calling an administrator or someone who has the lead and responsibility for planning, organizing, and gathering the partners together. I think the city makes an excellent partner, but without some sort of a housing authority or entity to implement housing projects, we are then a regulator, not an implementer. And so we do have land to be a partner, but what is, the ones listed here, the Rotary Club, the lifestyle housing, or even LIFT, they're perfectly capable of being the lead and making application for all of the things and bringing in the partners. The capacity of each organization is likely would be overwhelmed by a project of this size, so they would need partners to help them. The lifestyle housing has done some projects already. We have had inclusion build housing in our city. So in order for, we can get a report, but in order for a project like this to have legs, it has to have that person who's doing nothing but this project and planning and getting all of the moving pieces together and taking responsibility for the actual project. And we are open to any of the organizations within the city who are nonprofits bringing forward ideas and asking for things, and we try to work with all of those. The motion is fine. It's what we've been trying to do all along. We're hoping here to also set up some sort of a housing, if not authority, then a housing organization that takes these kinds of projects and moves them forward, whether it be tiny homes or apartment buildings or tiny apartment buildings. All of those things can be looked at. Multi-floor, housing units use up less area, require less piping and in general that way, but they're not for everybody. And so we need a variety of affordable housing in our community, and we need the legs for folks to make these things happen. And I'm hoping for both. Thanks.
Councillor Isaacson.
Can you repeat the motion, Chair, please?
Corporate officer, did you write it down? I'm hoping you did. You're usually really good at that.
There you go. Okay. So to me, this is it's a difficult vote because in theory support a proposal such as this to provide diversity in housing, affordable housing options in our community. I don't think this will result in anything tangible that our community can act on because we don't currently have the staff capacity to carry it through to fruition, and there isn't yet a clear community partner who will take the administrative burden of moving it forward. And so voting for this shows that, you know, yes, I support this in principle, but the meat of it is actually doing the work. And I see the idea from the community. Mr. Gelber, you have this fantastic idea and some ideas of people to potentially work with, but it requires a champion who's preparing proposals and doing the legwork, and that is not the city at this time. Because we have a long history of passing motions related to land use and housing development, and we're down the managers of planning that would carry this work forward. And so passing this, I don't think will get us any closer because we have that backlog, and we're going to need to come staff when they have capacity to compile all of those motions back to us and say, okay, you've passed these motions. How are we going to prioritize, or what's the plan, or what's the next step? So I support this in principle. I don't see us being able to make any tangible action on this until there's a clear, active community partner involved, particularly a charity, if that's the case, a precondition for some of the donations expected. And I don't think that's the work of the city. I think the city can be a great partner, but we're just not in a position at this time because we are still staffing up the types of roles that would do this work. Thank you.
What else? There was no.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I take the exact opposite view that Councillor Isaacson has just expressed. Council is to show leadership. If we show leadership by passing this motion, just like we would have shown leadership 2 years ago when I proposed my motion, there were people in the community that would have said, the city is committed to this. They're committed to solving homelessness. And they're committed to following good examples that have been demonstrated to be used in other parts of Canada and the United States. Therefore, I see the passing of this motion sending a clear, concise message to the people that are doers, people that know what is involved in making things happen. Seeing the support of the city, they will come forward. Thank you.
Councillor Palm.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll just echo similar comments that the mayor just made. If you don't start, and if you don't look, and you don't approach, nothing will ever happen. And the cost affordability of housing in our community these days is very depressing when you're a young person trying to start out in life. So I wholeheartedly support this motion just for that regard. I know there are nonprofits in our community that will step up. I know there are wealthy individuals that will also chip in, and we need to start down this path if anything is going to happen. Now is the time. Thank you, Chair.
See any other hands? So I'm going to say my last couple of words. And I think the only way you can get something done is to actually start trying to do it. I have to say, this is our goal, and this is what we're going to try, and we're going to work towards that. And that's what this motion does. It doesn't build 25 or 100 tiny homes. It doesn't house those people, but it sets up a framework to get set in motion the effort to set up the necessary partnerships, the necessary agreements, the necessary land to start working toward that goal. And if we don't start sometime, we will never get it done. We'll be people sitting around this table in 2035 trying to figure out how to do something about housing. We need deeply affordable housing like tiny homes are. We need mid-level housing, and we need top-end housing. We need every kind of housing there is, but we will never have bottom-end housing. The low-cost housing that tiny homes represent, if we don't do something to make it happen, because the competitive market isn't going to do it. So I urge everybody to support this motion. It won't make a difference today, and we won't get something done by the end of next week, but we will start things in motion. Anyone else? All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Well, that gets us down to public. I don't think we have any, what do we have? No late items, no notices of motion that I'm aware of, and public clarification. So we have an opportunity for the public to ask questions about things that are on tonight's agenda.
My name's Brianne. I just want to point out that Lyft wanted to collaboratively work with everybody and they're gone again. There's 15 in the encampments, 4 by where the outhouse is. They've had to move out of there because of the bears. Their outreach workers sit in their cars. They refuse to put garbage in their vehicles. So
Point of order.
we've been,
This is a question period, and this is not a place for us to talk about people who are no longer in the room and can't respond, and this isn't the place to have that.
If you have a question, you can go ahead and ask your question.
I do have a question. So they want the community to help, but what are we helping?
Question is to Lyft. They're not here.
Or the city?
I have an answer for that question. Anybody here is capable? Mayor would like to answer.
I think we've discussed numerous times the responsibility for the provincial government and municipal government. I think you would be best to talk to our new MLA.
Oh, I've been there. I've been there. So I'm here tonight because she asked me to ask a couple questions. So at the dinner at Scotiabank, the community goes there. And we've been asking questions. We've been going to the New Roots Clinic and we're met with, you can't come here. 3 of us have had police show up because we've gone there offering support.
Those are statements, they're not questions. So if you have a question for council, go ahead and ask.
Are you guys going to take responsible when the forest burns down?
Councillor Southcott.
My understanding is that the fire department's been very involved with fire risk situations to the degree that they can be. And I'm personally happy that the community at large is also interested. I am aware of various people who are contributing what they can. I'm really hoping to see cooperation.
Question about the site across from the hospital.
You got to identify
bush in
yourself,
there.
Tony.
Is super dense. Can we not find a place where we can put these people into a proper campground on some fat land where they're not going to burn our town down? Like it's that, you know, that if you walk in there coming into summer, things are drying up. So, you know, they're not having fires. They're trying to behave. We're really trying to keep an eye on them. But all it's going to take is a cigarette butt. That is dense forest. People do not belong camping in dense forest. I wouldn't even say they should be camping there if you had 6 of those plastic cubes there with a fire hose attached to it. It's an absolutely ridiculous place to have people camping. Never mind the liability that they're on a bank and somebody's liable to roll down into the ditch and drown. It's a
You have a
place to have
question?
people. Well, that's my question. Are we going to find a different spot that's safer where we're not going to burn down our town?
The city is not directing people where to camp.
Somebody's directing them there. They were told to go there. See, that's what we got to hear, that the city and Lyft and the police have said that that's the spot to go. And the police are even taking people there and specifically dropping them off there and making the problem worse. So I'm really concerned about that density of the forest there. So that's my question. Are we going to do something before it catches a major fire in there?
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. So in conversations with our fire chief, he visits very often. The eviction process for things that are of that nature, the onus would be on providing, if people have nowhere to go, to be providing adequate shelters, which are indoor space. The BC Housing and the provincial government has taken the policy that they won't fund encampments or facilities intended to support folks in the outside. They only want to fund indoor spaces. And so while we work on trying to get those indoor spaces, we are left in a bit of a gap. We've explored options for outdoor areas. The issue then becomes whoever authorizes a particular area outside then wears the responsibility to fund it and ensure there's adequate services, and the city doesn't have the budget for that, and the province hasn't stepped up with it. There is some funding for what they call outreach, but that is for only outreaching to people who are living outdoors but are not told where to live or authorized to be in a certain spot. The lack of funding and legal ability to run outdoor spaces outside of a campground which we don't have one for this particular purpose at this time, requires funding. All of it requires funding the city doesn't have. And legal liability goes along with it. So we don't, at this time, have a plan as the city of Powell River to designate an outdoor space.
Just like to clarify that I wasn't talking about evicting the people. Talking about as a community, we defined a spot where they paper the community can get involved. There's a whole bunch of people. They're just chomping at the bit to help these people and get involved. We can't do it in the bush. We need a spot to put it. The community will stand up. You'll come to help. Right? We've been out there. We've been trying to help. We've been trying to get things better, but we can't do it in a gully. We need a place where we can organize them, and they need to be transitioned from the tent. You can't take these people from a tent and throw them into an apartment. Think it's going to be an absolute fail. We need a transition camp.
I understood the question. Thank you.
Councillor Palm.
Through the chair, I'll just say a couple of words in this regard. I met with just a couple of individuals here and a couple of others from the encampments and had a good discussion on what was going on. And I pointed out to them in our discussions with BC Housing, they would rather see an indoor facility provided for overnight shelter, that type of thing. And, you know, we asked about an encampment, and that brings greater liability into play. I pointed that out to the individuals. But for the summer months right now, I went hearing their plea for a space where they could take ownership of and live in an encampment and provide good service for these individuals. The community forest, I reached out to them. They would be supportive of finding individuals with machinery to come and clear a site and put that into play during the summer months. And it would go a long way to alleviating the concern on wildfire and all the other things that are going on in that dense bush situation that we have at the present time. So, you know, I would really like to see somebody wrap their head around this and say, hey, we can do this. We can provide this service at a minimal cost. As community forest would said, yeah, we'll step up today if the will was there. Thank you, Chair.
Any other members of the public with a question? Mr. Galinsky, do you have any questions tonight? Okay, no one on the phone? Okay. Then the business being done, we are adjourned.